Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the historic city of Vienna, Austria. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. Lyla woke to church bells and the soft September light filtering through the gauze curtains of her hotel room in Vienna's historic core. The sounds drifting up from the street below were distinctly Viennese. The clop of horse hooves pulling a fiacre carriage, the gentle rumble of a tram, the murmur of early morning conversations in German. She dressed in comfortable clothes, suitable for a day of walking and exploring, knowing that Vienna revealed itself best at a leisurely pace, that rushing through the imperial city would miss its essential character. After freshening up, she went down to the hotel's cafe, where breakfast was being served. But more than food, she wanted her first experience of Viennese coffee culture, that institution which had elevated the simple act of drinking coffee to an art form, a ritual, almost a philosophy. She ordered a melange, the Viennese version of cappuccino, and it arrived in a proper porcelain cup on a small silver tray, with a glass of water and a tiny cookie. The coffee was perfect, strong espresso topped with steamed milk and foam, the proportions exact, the temperature ideal. She sipped it slowly, savoring not just the taste but the atmosphere. The cafe with its marble-topped tables and bentwood chairs, the newspapers on wooden holders, the unhurried pace that said time was meant to be spent, not just passed. After finishing her coffee and a fresh kipfel, the crescent-shaped pastry that was Vienna's gift to breakfast, she set out to explore, beginning on Herrengasse, one of the elegant streets in the first district, the historic center where Vienna's imperial past was most visible. The street was gracious and grand, buildings from the 18th and 19th centuries, their facades decorated with classical details, their ground floors housing elegant shops and cafes. The scale was human despite the grandeur, and she walked slowly, looking up at the architecture, noticing the decorative elements, carved stonework, iron balconies, statues in niches. She emerged onto Michaelerplatz, a square that seemed designed to demonstrate Vienna's layers of history. The Hofburg Palace entrance dominated one side, its green dome and white walls imposing. But in the center of the square, protected by glass, were Roman ruins. Foundations and walls from nearly 2,000 years ago, when Vienna had been a Roman military camp called Vindobona. She stood looking down at the ruins, ancient stones among modern traffic, the contrast striking. Rome's empire had stretched this far north, had built fortifications here on the Danube frontier, and some of those stones still remained, integrated into the contemporary city, past and present occupying the same space. From Michaelerplatz, she entered the Hofburg Palace complex, passing through the grand entrance into the outer courtyards. The Hofburg had been the winter residence of the Habsburgs, the imperial family who had ruled Austria and much of Central Europe for centuries, and the palace complex reflected that power. Vast courtyards, multiple wings and buildings, each era's rulers adding their contribution. She walked through the courtyards, admiring the architecture, baroque wings with ornate facades, Renaissance elements integrated with later additions, the whole complex, a record of architectural evolution. The Spanish riding school's exterior caught her attention, a more restrained building but elegant, home to the famous white Lipizzaner horses and their classical dressage performances, a tradition continuing since the 16th century. From the Hofburg, she walked to the Volksgarten, the People's Garden, a public park created in the early 19th century on the site of fortifications destroyed during Napoleon's occupation. The garden was beautiful even in September, the summer flowers fading, but the roses still blooming, the rose garden displaying dozens of varieties, their colors and fragrances creating a sensory experience. At the center of the garden stood the Theseus Temple, a small Greek revival structure, a replica of the Temple of Hephaestus in Athens, built to house a sculpture and serving now as an architectural folly, a romantic element in the garden's design. She sat on a bench near the rose garden, enjoying the peaceful atmosphere, watching other visitors walk the paths. An elderly couple strolled arm in arm, stopping to smell roses, their comfort with each other evident. A young woman sat on the grass, reading a book, completely absorbed. The garden offered respite from the city's stone and grandeur, a place to breathe and rest. From the Volksgarten, she walked to Heldenplatz Heroes Square, a vast open space in front of the Hofburg's new palace wing. The square was monumental in scale, designed to impress, and it had witnessed some of Vienna's most significant historical moments, including Hitler's announcement of the Anschluss in 1938, when Austria was absorbed into Nazi Germany, a dark moment in the city's history that the square couldn't forget. She crossed Heldenplatz and made her way to Graben, one of Vienna's most famous streets, a wide pedestrian boulevard lined with luxury shops and elegant buildings. At its center stood the Plague Column, an ornate Baroque monument erected in the late 17th century after Vienna survived the plague, a thanksgiving expressed in marble and gilding, angels and saints in dramatic poses, the whole thing reaching toward heaven. The Graben was busy with shoppers and tourists, street musicians performing at intervals, the atmosphere lively but refined, distinctly Viennese. She walked its length, window shopping, admiring the buildings, feeling the city's elegance and prosperity, the sense that Vienna knew its own worth and maintained its standards. At the end of Graben, St. Stephen's Cathedral, Stephansdom, rose before her, its Gothic spires dramatic against the September sky, the distinctive zigzag pattern of colored tiles on the roof visible even from ground level. The cathedral was Vienna's most famous landmark, its south tower, the Steffel, a symbol of the city, and its presence anchored the historic center, visible from many points, orienting visitors and residents alike. She entered the cathedral, where the interior was vast and shadowy, columns rising to support the vaulted ceiling, Gothic architecture at its most powerful. Stained glass windows filtered colored light, and the altar was elaborate with golden carvings. She walked slowly around the perimeter, sitting in a pew for a few moments, appreciating the quiet despite the tourists, the sense of continuity. This cathedral had stood here since the 14th century, surviving sieges and wars, fires and changes of regime, remaining central to Viennese life. By now it was lunchtime, and she decided to visit the Naschmarkt, Vienna's famous outdoor market, in the 6th district. She walked to the nearby metro station and took the U1 line to Karlsplatz, a few stops away, emerging near the market. The Naschmarkt stretched for blocks, a vibrant mixture of food stalls and restaurants, vendors selling produce and spices, cheeses and olives, flowers and baked goods, everything displayed with care and abundance. The market had been here in various forms since the 16th century, and it maintained that tradition of being Vienna's larder, its gathering place for food and community. She walked through slowly, absorbing the atmosphere. Vendors calling out in German and other languages, the smell of spices and fresh bread, the visual abundance of colorful vegetables and exotic fruits. She stopped at a small restaurant with outdoor seating and ordered a spätzle dish with mushrooms and a glass of white wine from the Wachau region. The food was comforting and delicious. The spätzle, tiny egg noodles, perfectly cooked, the mushrooms earthy and rich, the wine crisp and fruity, complementing the food well. She ate slowly, watching the market's activity, enjoying the way Viennese and visitors mixed here, the market serving both tourist attraction and local necessity. After lunch, she walked back to Karlsplatz and found the Ringstrasse tram stop. The Ringstrasse, the Ring, was the grand boulevard that circled the historic center, built in the mid-19th century on the site of old fortifications, lined with monumental buildings that represented the height of Imperial Vienna's confidence and prosperity. She boarded tram 1, finding a seat by the window, and settled in for the ride around part of the Ring. The tram moved smoothly along the boulevard, and she watched the buildings scroll past, each one significant. The State Opera appeared first, its Renaissance Revival architecture imposing, its reputation as one of the world's great opera houses undiminished. Even from the tram she could sense its importance, the way it anchored this section of the Ring. Next came the Parliament building, a Greek Revival structure with a statue of Athena in front, democracy symbolized through classical architecture, the building's columns and pediments suggesting ancient Athens, though built in the late 19th century. The Rathaus, City Hall, rose on the other side, Gothic Revival this time, all pointed arches and towers, a different historical reference but equally grand, the building scale demonstrating municipal pride and ambition. The Burgtheater, the National Theatre, came next, another monumental building, Baroque Revival, dedicated to German-language drama, continuing a tradition of theatrical excellence that made Vienna central to European culture. The University of Vienna appeared, more restrained but still impressive, Renaissance Revival, education and learning given architectural expression, the university one of the oldest in the German-speaking world. Each building was different in style but united by scale and ambition, the whole Ringstrasse, a showcase of 19th-century historicism, every significant era of Western architecture represented, creating a theatrical backdrop to Viennese life. She got off the tram near Stadtpark, the city park that sat on the edge of the Ring. She walked into the park, following paths that wound between trees and flower beds, past a small stream, until she found what she was looking for. The golden statue of Johann Strauss, the younger one, Vienna's waltz king. The statue was distinctive. Strauss playing his violin, the figure gilded in gold, set within an elaborate marble arch. It was one of Vienna's most photographed monuments, and she understood why. It captured something essential about the city, the way music wasn't just entertainment but identity. The way Vienna had exported waltzes and operettas to the world, becoming synonymous with a particular kind of elegant, romantic culture. From Stadtpark, she walked back to Karlsplatz and visited the Albertina, one of Vienna's premier art museums, housed in a palace that was itself architecturally significant. The museum's collection was vast, but she focused on a few highlights: drawings by the old masters, including some remarkable Dürer works, the detail and skill evident even in pencil and ink. She spent time with a small exhibition of Impressionist paintings, Monet and Renoir, their light and color, a contrast to the Germanic emphasis on line and form. Art museums required a particular kind of attention, and after an hour she felt satisfied, her visual appetite fulfilled, ready to move on to the next experience. She took the U4 metro from Karlsplatz to Schönbrunn, the stop for Schönbrunn Palace, the Habsburgs' summer residence, and one of Vienna's most visited attractions. The palace itself was magnificent, a vast yellow Baroque building with countless rooms. But what drew her were the gardens, which were free to enter and famous for their beauty and extent. She walked through the formal gardens, which were laid out in the French style: geometric patterns, carefully trimmed hedges, gravel paths, fountains, and statues positioned strategically. The scale was enormous, the gardens stretching back from the palace, climbing the hill behind it, the design demonstrating absolute control over nature, everything ordered and symmetrical. The September afternoon was mild and pleasant, perfect for walking, and she took her time, following paths that led to different areas: the maze, where hedges created a puzzle; the gloriette, a neoclassical structure on the hilltop, offering views back over the palace and Vienna beyond; quiet corners with benches, where she could rest and watch other visitors. The gardens were busy, but never felt crowded. The space was too vast, the paths too numerous. She found herself sharing a bench with an older woman, who was sketching one of the fountains, her pencil moving confidently across the paper. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" the woman said in English, noticing Lyla looking at her sketch. "Very beautiful," Lyla agreed, "both the garden and your drawing." "I come here often. The gardens change with every season, every light. I never get tired of trying to capture them." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the artist sketching, Lyla simply observing, both of them appreciating the garden's beauty in their own ways. As the afternoon progressed toward evening, Lyla made her way back toward the city center, taking the metro to Stephansplatz, wanting to experience the area around the cathedral at night, to see Vienna in its evening aspect. The square around St. Stephen's was transformed, lights illuminating the cathedral's Gothic facade, making it dramatic against the darkening sky, the intricate stonework visible in new ways. The square was busy with people, couples strolling, groups heading to dinner, street performers entertaining small crowds. She walked around the cathedral, seeing it from different angles, each one revealing new details. The colored tile roof was less visible at night, but the stone lacework of the towers and the portal sculptures were highlighted by strategic lighting. The surrounding streets were equally beautiful at night, shop windows glowing, restaurants with outdoor seating despite the cooling temperature, the warm yellow light of street lamps creating intimate pools of illumination. Vienna at night felt safe and welcoming, elegant and lived in, a city comfortable with itself. She found a small wine tavern, a Heuriger, on a side street, and went in, ordering a glass of Grüner Veltliner, Austria's signature white wine, and some bread with spreads. The tavern was cozy and traditional, with wood paneling and low lighting, a few tables occupied by locals finishing their day with wine and conversation. The wine was crisp and peppery, distinctly Austrian, and she sipped it slowly, listening to the German conversations around her, understanding nothing but appreciating the rhythm and tone, the way language could be music, even without comprehension. After finishing her wine, she walked slowly back to her hotel, taking a circuitous route through the historic center, seeing it in its nighttime stillness. The grand buildings and elegant streets were mostly empty now, the day's crowds having dispersed, and she could appreciate the architecture without distraction, the way streetlight and building lights created drama and beauty. At her hotel, she climbed the stairs to her room, tired in the best way, muscles used from walking, mind full of images and impressions. She opened the window to let in the night air and sat in the chair near it, looking out at the street below and the buildings beyond. She thought about the day, about the layers of history visible everywhere, Roman ruins in Michaelplatz, medieval cathedral, Baroque palaces, 19th-century Ringstrasse buildings, all of it preserved and integrated, Vienna treating its past not as museum pieces, but as living architecture, buildings continuing to serve purposes, adapted when necessary, but fundamentally respected. She thought about the coffee culture, and the gardens, the museums and the market, the tram ride and the palace grounds, the way Vienna offered both grand imperial gestures and intimate human-scaled pleasures, balancing magnificence with livability. The city had a particular character, she decided, elegant without being stuffy, cultured without being pretentious, proud of its history, but not trapped by it. Vienna knew what it was, a former imperial capital, a city of music and art, a crossroads of Central Europe, and it maintained those traditions while adapting to contemporary life. September in Vienna was ideal. The summer heat passed, autumn just beginning, the city relaxed after the peak tourist season, the light golden and gentle. The gardens showing their late summer blooms, the opera season about to begin, the cafes full but not crowded, the whole city at its most comfortable and welcoming. She remained at the window for a while, not quite ready to end the day. The sounds of the city drifting up, distant music, voices, the rumble of a late tram. Vienna continued its evening, and she felt grateful to be here, to have walked its streets and visited its gardens, to have experienced its particular combination of grandeur and grace, history and modernity, culture and comfort. The church bells rang, marking the late hour, their tones carrying across the historic center, a sound that had marked time in Vienna for centuries, that would continue marking it for centuries more. The city of music and elegance, they called it, and sitting in her window, listening to the bells and the night, Lyla understood perfectly, felt it in the air and the stones, in the coffee and the wine, in the gardens and the cathedral, in every aspect of this city that had perfected the art of living well, of creating beauty and maintaining it, of honoring the past while remaining fully present, relaxed and peaceful and enduringly elegant.